Before we start, I need you to think about something most people never consider. What if the most dangerous empires in history weren't built by evil men, but by extraordinarily capable ones? Men who simply had no other door open to them. This is the story of Joaquín Archibaldo Guzmán Lara. The world knows him as El Chapo. And by the time this is over, you're going to understand something uncomfortable about ambition, poverty, and the systems that produce both. So picture a stickman. And this time, strip everything away. No city, no school worth attending, no father with connections, no safety net of any kind, just mountains. The Sierra Madre Occidental Range in the state of Sinaloa, Mexico. A region so remote, so poor, so disconnected from anything resembling opportunity, that for most people born there, the horizon ends at the valley walls. That's where Joaquín Guzmán is born in 1957, into a family of subsistence farmers in a small community called La Tuna. His father, by some accounts, is a poppy farmer himself. Violence is not something that comes later in Chapo's life. It is the texture of the world he is born into. He drops out of school in 3rd grade, not because he isn't intelligent, but because there is work to be done and the family cannot eat without it. And in La Tuna, in Sinaloa, in the late 1960s, the work available to a poor boy with no education and no connections is growing poppies, processing them, moving them. So here is the first thing you need to understand. El Chapo does not discover the drug trade. He is born inside it. It is the water he swims in before he is old enough to understand what water is. And that matters enormously, because we talk about his choices as if he was standing at a crossroads between equal options. He was not. He was standing at a crossroads between the drug trade and nothing. That is not an excuse for what comes later, but it is the truth of what came first. By his early 20s, Chapo is working within the Guadalajara Cartel, the dominant trafficking organization in Mexico at the time, run by a man named Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, El Padrino, the Godfather. And under Félix Gallardo, Chapo begins to learn not just the mechanics of moving drugs, the architecture of an organization, how power distributes, how loyalty is built and broken, how routes are established and protected, how corruption is deployed systematically across law enforcement, military, and government. He is an apprentice in one of the most sophisticated criminal enterprises in the Western Hemisphere, and he is paying very close attention. But what separates Chapo from the men around him is not ruthlessness. Plenty of men in that world are ruthless. It is his obsession with logistics, specifically the problem of the border. Because the fundamental challenge of drug trafficking in the 1980s is simple. The product is in Mexico. The money is in the United States. Between them is the most heavily monitored border in the world. And crossing it reliably, repeatedly, at scale, is the problem that defines the entire industry. Chapo looks at that problem and sees it as an engineering challenge. He begins building tunnels, not crude holes in the ground, sophisticated subterranean passages, with ventilation, lighting, rail systems to move product efficiently. The first major tunnel discovered by U.S. authorities in 1990 runs 1,400 feet beneath the border at Douglas, Arizona. It is so well constructed that investigators describe it as an engineering marvel. And it is just the beginning. When Félix Gallardo is arrested in 1989 and the Guadalajara cartel fractures, Chapo does not fracture with it. He positions himself, takes the Sinaloa Plaza, the Pacific Corridor, and begins building something new. Something that will eventually become the most powerful drug trafficking organization in history, the Sinaloa Cartel. But not yet. First, he is captured, after a shootout at the Guadalajara airport that kills a Catholic cardinal in the crossfire. The political pressure becomes impossible to ignore. Chapo is arrested in Guatemala, extradited to Mexico, sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. And the story should end here. But it doesn't, because Chapo in prison is Chapo with time. And time, for a man like this, is not punishment. It is planning. He runs operations from inside the facility, reportedly bribes his way to considerable comfort, and spends years mapping the specific contours of how to leave. On January 19, 2001, a laundry cart, a compliant guard, a facility where enough money had moved to enough people that the door was essentially open. He walks out, and the question that Mexican authorities have to confront publicly is not just how it happened, it is how obvious it was that it could happen. He is free for 13 years, and in those 13 years, the Sinaloa Cartel becomes a transnational enterprise of staggering scale. At its peak, operating in more than 50 countries. More than 50, with estimated annual revenues in the billions. a distribution network that reaches every major American city. Corruption so embedded in Mexican institutions that the line between the cartel and the state becomes genuinely difficult to locate. Chapo manages this not through the public terror of organizations like the Zetas, but through a combination of strategic violence and extraordinary organizational discipline. He is famous for targeting rivals with precision, and for rewarding loyalty with a generosity that binds people to him more effectively than fear. He builds infrastructure in Sinaloa: roads, jobs, houses. The same dynamic that made Escobar beloved in Medellin operates here. When the government has never built you anything, and one man builds you a road, the question of where his money comes from matters less than the fact that the road exists. Meanwhile, the U.S. government places him on their most wanted list, offers a $5 million reward for information leading to his capture. DEA intelligence assets are repositioned toward finding him. The Mexican military conducts raids in the Sierra Madre, comes close, reportedly, multiple times. He moves constantly. A network of safe houses across Sinaloa and beyond. Communication protocols designed to prevent electronic interception. A system of lookouts that stretches across entire regions. He is protected not just by money, but by genuine popular support in the communities where he operates. People do not give him up, because he is, to many of them, their own. February 2014. Mexican Marines move on a safe house in Culiacan. Chapo escapes through a network of connected tunnels beneath the city. The footage of investigators discovering the passages, tunnels that connect multiple houses, run beneath streets, descend through bathtub floors via hydraulic lifts, is genuinely extraordinary. This is not improvisation. This is infrastructure built over years. He is captured days later, held again. Then in July 2015, a mile-long tunnel emerges in the floor of his prison cell shower, with a motorcycle on rails to move him quickly through it. He disappears again. The engineering, the planning, the resources required, the institutional corruption necessary to build a tunnel into a maximum security facility without detection. Each of these things represents a systemic failure at a scale that is almost difficult to process. And each escape makes him larger than a man. He becomes a symbol of the state's inability to contain what it failed to prevent, of the absurdity of a justice system that can be measured in meters of tunnel. The second escape ends in January 2016, a 6-month operation involving Mexican Marines coordinating with DEA intelligence. He is found in Los Mochis, Sinaloa, captured after a confrontation that kills 5 of his guards. This time, the calculation is different. The Mexican government, under immense American pressure and aware that another escape would be a political catastrophe beyond recovery, extradites him to the United States in January 2017. He arrives in New York to face federal charges of drug trafficking, murder conspiracy, and money laundering. The trial begins in November 2018, and what unfolds over 3 months in a Brooklyn federal courtroom is something between a criminal prosecution and a documentary. Witnesses describe the full operational architecture of the Sinaloa Cartel, bribery of Mexican officials at every level, assassination operations, the sheer scale of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and marijuana moved across the border over 3 decades. One cooperating witness describes delivering a $100 million bribe directly to a former Mexican president. That claim is disputed, never formally charged, but its presence in a federal courtroom says everything about the environment in which the Sinaloa Cartel operated. In February 2019, guilty on all 10 counts, sentenced to life plus 30 years, transferred to ADX Florence in Colorado. The Supermax facility where the United States puts the people it most needs to be certain will never leave. No natural light. Near total isolation. The most controlled environment the American penal system can construct. And there he remains. The boy from La Tuna. The 3rd-grade dropout. The tunnel builder. The man who ran a global empire from the mountains of Sinaloa for 30 years. Now in a concrete room designed to make escape architecturally impossible. But here is what the sentence does not resolve. The Sinaloa Cartel still operates. His sons, known as Los Chapitos, assumed control of significant portions of the organization. The fentanyl crisis, which has killed more Americans annually than any previous drug epidemic, flows substantially through Sinaloa trafficking networks. The infrastructure Chapo built, the routes, the corruption, the border-crossing architecture, did not retire when he did. It adapted. Because that is what systems do. They outlast individuals. And the system Chapo built was never really about him. It was about the demand on one side of the border and the poverty on the other. Those two forces, vast American appetite for substances that alter consciousness, and vast Mexican rural poverty with no alternative economic engine, were not created by Joaquín Guzmán. He simply built the most efficient bridge between them that anyone had ever constructed. And this is the uncomfortable question underneath all of it. Not whether El Chapo was guilty. That part is settled in a Brooklyn courtroom. The question is what we do with the understanding that men like him are not anomalies. They are products of specific conditions, extreme poverty, absent institutions, corrupted systems, and a market worth hundreds of billions of dollars annually that governments have spent 50 years and trillions of dollars trying to eliminate, without meaningfully reducing. The demand did not go away when Chapo went to prison. It never goes away. And as long as that demand exists, and as long as La Tuna exists, another boy is watching, paying attention, learning the routes, and deciding that the tunnel is the only door he can see. If this story made you think differently about how empires are built and why they survive, share it with someone who needs to see beyond the headlines. Because the real story of El Chapo isn't about one man in a prison cell. It's about the world that made him inevitable and what we're still not willing to change.